ton doodles, Tay-K paid the way. Chopper tell your duties, it's a fish fillet.
Did the jury find the defendant, Trevon McIntyre, guilty of lesser included offense of murder.
3 hours today here before deciding on that 55-year sentence. That song that raised the profile of Tay-K McIntyre in the end also likely played a role in that prison sentence.
It's crazy to think about that. You probably would have already seen the world right now if you weren't locked up. Like there's crazy amount of opportunities that be available to you right now.
Yeah. I mean, they still gonna be there. I'm gonna be out soon, hopefully.
Trevon McIntyre, better known as Tay-K, has been locked up for the past 7 years, serving a 55-year sentence handed down by a jury.
And his song about running from crime made him known, but teenage rapper Tay-K will not be able to run from a now 55-year prison sentence, delivered in fact by a jury earlier today.
Before all that, though, he spent about 8 months on house arrest, but that didn't last long. One day, he tweeted out saying he'd had enough, and along with his best friend, cut off his ankle monitor. They decided to hit the road, telling the cops they'd have to catch them if they wanted them back. It sparked a nationwide manhunt that lasted 3 months, with U.S. Marshals eventually tracking him down on the other side of the country. The crazy part is Tay-K taunted the authorities the whole time, making it clear he wasn't going to go quietly. On June 30th, 2017, they finally captured him, but Tay-K had one more wild move left. Just hours after his arrest, a music video for his song The Race dropped on YouTube. The timing was insane, and the internet went wild. Almost overnight, the song became a viral hit, and everyone was tuned into the story of this 17-year-old kid who had not only ran from the cops but also made music about it. People couldn't help but watch, but at that time, most had no idea just how serious his crimes were. The blood of 2 innocent people had been spilled in the process. Now, Tay-K is 24 years old and looks back on it all, claiming he never got the chance to really live as an adult. He feels he was treated unfairly, especially compared to one of his co-defendants, a white girl who only got 10 years of probation, while Tay-K got slammed with 55 years behind bars for one of the murders. This led to him saying that if he was white, his punishment wouldn't have been so harsh. According to the rapper, one of my co-defendants was a white girl who was 16 just like me. They didn't certify her as an adult, but they certified me and Pimp as adults. Pimp got 30, I got 55. She ended up getting 10 years of probation without no deal. That girl's at home right now. Apparently, all he wants now is a second chance at life.
If I was a little white kid, they wouldn't have gave me no 55 years for a crime I was alleged to play the most insignificant role in when I was 16. They would have rightfully argued that my mind wasn't fully developed and gave me rehabilitation and a second chance at adulthood.
But with that heavy sentence, he might not see freedom until he's old and gray. However, even with that massive sentence looming over him, Tay-K hasn't stopped causing trouble behind bars. He's still stirring things up, still repping the same lifestyle, and picking up new charges while doing his time.
Attacking while he was on the run, and there was a stream of corrections officers, one after the next, who talked about the problems that they have had with him in jail since he was caught.
People walking up and down that hallway, he would either yell at them or try to reach out and grab him, but
threw what appeared to be wet paper at another inmate that was using the phone.
But despite all of that, Tay-K holds on to the belief that one day he'll be able to come home. Whether that's possible or not is a big question mark, but let's dive in deeper. Tay-K's story starts long before the headlines. He was born on June 16, 2000 in Long Beach, California, right in the middle of Crips territory. Both of his parents were gang members, his dad was in and out of prison, and his mom was active with the Baby Insane Crips while raising Tay-K and his sister Kayla. Things took a turn for the worse when Tay-K's dad went to prison for 7 years after a deal went bad in 2002. Without a father figure around, Tay-K struggled to find direction, and eventually his mom couldn't handle raising the kids on her own anymore. They ended up bouncing around the foster care system, getting shuffled between different families who never really wanted them. That was how Tay-K and his sister spent most of their childhood stuck in the system.
Been in foster care since we were really young, damn near all our life. We never stayed with our parents. We kind of stayed in different foster homes, bouncing around.
They never even really got to experience Christmas like other kids. After a while, their mom managed to break free from the gang life and move the family to Las Vegas, trying to start fresh. But that didn't last long. About a year later, in 2009, Tay-K's dad got out of prison and they were forced to move to Texas. Tay-K hated it. He enrolled in elementary school and later went to middle school, but home life was rough. His dad had become a lashing out over the smallest things. Tay-K didn't want to be at home, so he started spending more and more time at friends' houses looking for an escape. And that's when the streets really pulled him in. He found the freedom he was searching for, and in return, he gave himself fully to that life. In 2014, Tay-K was just a freshman at Martin High School, but school wasn't really where his heart was. Most of his time was spent hanging out with his friends, freestyling and messing around. They called themselves the Daytona Boyz, a loud, rowdy group that was more about rapping and smoking weed than sitting in a classroom. Whether they showed up to school or ditched didn't matter much. The crew consisted of three main guys: Eric Johnson, who went by Santana Sage, Jalen Bell, aka Pimps, and Tay-K, who at the time rapped under the name Tay-K-47. They even had a manager, Ezra, who played a crucial role behind the scenes, helping them with everything from booking shows to managing their music. To the Daytona Boyz, this was more than just a rap group. It was a brotherhood. They knew they had something special going, so they figured, why not start uploading tracks to SoundCloud? But even though music was becoming a bigger part of his life, Tay-K just couldn't keep out of trouble. One old tweet shows a letter where he was expelled from high school for bringing weed onto school grounds. After that, Tay-K had no interest in going back to school. And since things at home weren't much better, he pretty much became a drifter. He often crashed at Pimp's house, and after getting kicked out of school, the two only grew closer. By age 15, Tay-K was on his own, with all his attention focused on his music and pushing the Daytona Boyz as much as possible. You could even see him in interviews before anyone really knew who they were. Thanks to their manager Ezra, the Daytona Boyz were making moves. They were booking shows and their buzz started growing. After gigs, which often ran late into the night, the boys would hit the streets doing whatever they felt they had to do to survive. That meant robbing, stealing, and carrying guns, and if anyone crossed them, they'd learn the hard way. One night stands out more than the rest. It was New Year's Eve 2015 and the Daytona Boyz had just wrapped up a show in Arlington. It was around 2 a.m. and Santana Sage, the only one with a car, was driving Tay-K and Pimp. Tay-K sat up front and Pimps was in the back as they pulled up to a stoplight. Another car pulled up beside them, and from here, things get hazy. The exact details are unclear, but what we do know is that Santana fired a gun into the other car, killing a 21-year-old college student named Sarah Muchlechner in cold blood. After that, they drove off like nothing happened, with Tay-K and Pimps still in the car. Santana was later arrested after police matched his vehicle to the crime using his Twitter account.
Eric Johnson is charged with murder for the death of 20-year-old Sarah Muchlechner. She was shot in the head during a drive-by shooting.
In court, his defense was that the people in the other car had been calling them racial slurs, and that's what provoked him. He claimed he only meant to scare them with the gunshots, but his intentions didn't matter. An innocent girl was dead, and her parents were left to grieve and wonder why.
Johnson testified that a question from his SUV, "Where's the next party?" was answered by gay and racial slurs. That Johnson testified he displayed his gun, admitted he fired 2 shots, but that he meant only to frighten, to shoot over the car, not to kill anyone.
Tay-K and Pimps, however, were both minors at the time and faced no charges. In fact, their names were never even mentioned in court. Walking away from something so serious with no consequences made them feel invincible. After a 6-month trial, it only took the jury 3 hours to find Santana Sage guilty, sentencing him to 44 years in prison. At just 15 years old, Tay-K was in a tough spot. He had no money, nowhere to stay, and wasn't even old enough to legally work. He needed to figure out how to survive, and fast. So on July 26, 2016, Tay-K, Pimps, and 5 others came up with a plan to rob someone. The crew included Sean Robinson, Letharian Merritt, Ariana Barrett, Megan Holt, and a minor named Mia, who happened to be dating 17-year-old Zachary Belote, their target. The plan was pretty straightforward. Mia would lure Zachary into a trap while Tay-K and the others would wait nearby ready to rob him. Zachary and his roommate Ethan Walker were living in a house on the 1500 block of Mansfield, Texas. Tay-K and the crew met up at an apartment beforehand where they gathered weapons and hashed out the details. Pimps armed himself with brass knuckles and 2 others grabbed guns. Tay-K didn't have a weapon but made it clear that if anything went down, he expected the others to have his back. Around 5 p.m., Mia, Ariana, and Megan arrived at Zachary's house pretending like they just wanted to hang out and smoke. But what Zachary didn't know was that Tay-K, Pimps, Sean, and Letharian were sitting in a car down the street waiting for a text from the girls to kick off the robbery.
The girls planned this. They set it up, and the boys were supposed to come in and hold everybody off and Tay-K had a bag. It was going to get the money.
It seemed like a simple enough plan, but things didn't go as smoothly as they had hoped. When the girls got there, they realized there were way more people in the house than they expected. This threw off their timing and the plan got delayed for hours. As 10 p.m. approached, Tay-K and the others were getting impatient. They knew it was now or never. The girls decided to go ahead with the plan despite the extra people, and while no one was looking, they unlocked the door for the guys. That's when everything went south. 4 men burst into the house, 2 of them armed. Sean held Zachary at gunpoint while Lotharian aimed at Ethan. Tay-K and Pimp searched the house for anything valuable, but it quickly became clear they weren't going to find what they were promised. Then in a matter of minutes, everything spiraled out of control. Lotharian panicked. Without even fully realizing what he was doing, he shot Ethan Walker in the chest, killing him.
Ethan Walker sat on the floor with his back against a bed with his hands up in the air in a vulnerable, defenseless position. Lotharian Merritt shot him through the heart.
At the same time, Sean freaked out after hearing the first shot and fired at Zachary, hitting him in the shoulder. Zachary survived, but the damage was done. The robbery had turned into a murder, and it was only a matter of time before the police caught up with them.
A survivor of the shooting, Zach Below, testified today he realized he'd been set up for the crime by a girl he thought he was dating.
In a now famous interrogation video, Tay-K can be seen breaking down in tears as investigators pressed him about what happened that night. At first he tried to hold back, but eventually he admitted to being part of the robbery. However, he insisted that he never shot anyone or knew that things would end in murder.
This video from almost 3 years ago shows a 16-year-old Tamor McIntyre in a small room with police, uncomfortable, wiping his eyes at times, and finally admitting to investigators he played a role in a home invasion and murder.
He had just turned 16 when he was arrested and was held in juvenile detention for 2 weeks. He couldn't be released until an adult came to pick him up, and his older sister Kayla had just turned 18. After saving up for 2 months to get her own place, she was finally able to become Tay-K's legal guardian. After being released from juvenile detention, Tay-K was only allowed to stay free under one condition. He had to wear an ankle monitor for constant surveillance. His friend Pimps was also released but placed on house arrest. The two stayed close, keeping in touch online every night, while Tay-K spent most of his time stuck at home. Police had Kayla's apartment under tight watch, pulling over anyone who left the building, making it clear that they were keeping an eye on everything. Trapped at home, Tay-K kept busy by tweeting, asking friends to come over and record music with him. At the time, he dropped a few songs on SoundCloud but held back most of his music for something bigger. From July 2016 to March 2017, Tay-K was stuck indoors, thinking about his next move. He was only 16, but the stress was piling up. Facing charges as an adult, he didn't have a lawyer or any money and had no idea what the future held for him. That's when he came up with a bold idea. On Sunday, March 26, 2017, late at night, Tay-K posted a now infamous tweet declaring that he was done with house arrest. The tweet went viral and it spread all over social media. He called Pimps, and together they hatched a plan. Both of them would cut off their ankle monitors and make it known to the world that they didn't care. To them, this was all a game, and if the police wanted to catch them, they'd have to come and find them. Their first stop after going on the run was San Antonio, a 3-hour drive away, where they laid low for a few weeks. Even though he was wanted by the police, Tay-K didn't seem too worried about being on the run. He was spotted by fans at malls, local restaurants, and even out in public like nothing had changed. Meanwhile, Pimps had been messaging a local photographer, Mark Salvador, setting up plans to meet up for a photo shoot. But Tay-K and Pimps weren't actually interested in taking pictures. They wanted to rob Mark for his camera gear. They arranged to meet Mark around 5 p.m. near an empty parking garage. The plan was for Mark to hop into their car to smoke, and once he was inside, Tay-K and Pimps would take all his stuff, take him out of the car, and drive off. But like many of their plans, things quickly went wrong. As they tried to rob him, Mark started yelling for help, running toward the street. Tay-K and Pimps sped after him, trying to run him over. Mark managed to jump onto the hood of the car and held on as they sped through the streets. They pulled into a nearby Chick-fil-A parking lot to try and shake him off. When the car stopped, Mark jumped off and stomped on the windshield, shattering it. This enraged Tay-K. Allegedly, he leaned out of the car window and shot Mark, flinging his body onto the ground and leaving him there to die. Unbeknownst to them, the entire thing was captured by a nearby surveillance camera. Now, Tay-K and Pimps knew they were in serious trouble. But instead of laying low, they had other plans. They still had Mark's camera equipment and a bit of cash. So they decided to make a quick stop in Arlington before planning their next big move. By this time, the San Antonio police had already tied them to Mark's murder at Chick-fil-A. Realizing they couldn't stick around, they decided to make a 23-hour road trip to New Jersey, where they knew a few people who could offer a place to stay. Every dollar they had was needed just to make the journey. And they even had a local videographer who was willing to shoot a music video for free once they got there. By early June, police were getting closer, receiving tips about Tay-K's whereabouts and posting wanted posters in the area they believed he might be hiding. But Tay-K didn't see this as a problem. Instead, he saw another marketing opportunity. He decided to drop a song about his escape from the police, turning his run from the law into the now famous track, The Race. Tay-K was determined to make his next big move, and the timing couldn't have been better. He had just cut off his ankle monitor and went on the run, and his birthday was right around the corner. He figured it was the perfect moment to drop his next track, The Race. His followers on SoundCloud and Twitter were the first to hear the song, but there was no video just yet. That would come soon. Tay-K, with the help of a cameraman who didn't charge him a dime, filmed the music video the very next day. It took only about a day to edit the footage, but everything was ready whenever Tay-K wanted to release it. While he was hiding out in New Jersey with pimps, they spent their last days of freedom ducking the law and trying to keep a low profile. But US Marshals were closing in, and it was only a matter of time before they were caught. Finally, after a total of 96 days on the run, both Tay-K and pimps were arrested in a New Jersey home on June 30th, 2017, just 2 weeks after Tay-K's birthday.
Breaking news to share with you. We just learned 17-year-old Tamar McIntyre has been arrested in New Jersey by the U.S. Marshal Service.
The race had ended, but Tay-K still had one more play up his sleeve. He wanted the world to hear his story before he went down for good. Just 2 hours after his arrest, the music video for The Race was uploaded to YouTube, and it blew up instantly. People were captivated by the story of this teenage rapper who had been on the run from US Marshals and filmed a music video while doing it. Social media pushed the video everywhere, and it racked up hundreds of thousands of views every day. The track became a viral hit, and soon other rappers started remixing it. The hashtag #FreeTay-K was trending, but not many people seemed to pay attention to the serious crimes he was now facing. Law enforcement, however, was not going to let Tay-K off easy. They wanted to make an example out of him, and Texas has a reputation for being tough on crime, especially murder. A month after his arrest, a judge ruled that Tay-K would be tried as an adult even though he had just turned 17.
Tay-K, whose real name is Tamar McIntyre, appeared in a Toronto County courtroom Wednesday wearing a red jumpsuit. A judge officially certified the 17-year-old controversial rapper to stand trial as an adult in the capital murder case.
Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, The Race had gained almost 20 million views, and record labels started to take notice of his rising fame. Despite being charged with 2 murders, Tay-K managed to sign a record deal, and his label released a project titled Santana World with The Race as the headline track. The project was a success, and over the next 6 months, The Race accumulated over 100 million views, even earning remixes from rappers like 21 Savage and Young Nudy. Tay-K became one of the few artists in history to have a massive hit song while never performing it live. Despite the serious charges hanging over him, Tay-K still seemed hopeful that he could beat the case and walk free. He believed his time in jail was only temporary. However, reality started to hit hard in early 2018, as sentencing for the 2016 murder of Ethan Walker began to be handed down. Megan Holt, who was recognized by the courts as the mastermind behind the plan to rob Ethan, was sentenced to 20 years in February. Mia, Zachary Bellett's girlfriend who had cooperated with the police, received only 10 years of probation in exchange for her testimony. The people involved in the crime around Tay-K were starting to fall one by one. Tay-K had already been denied bail, and the judge was clearly upset with the public support for him online. Letharian Merritt, the man who shot Ethan Walker, was sentenced to 40 years. On top of that, in June, news broke that Tay-K was being sued by the parents of Mark Salvador, the photographer killed in the Chick-fil-A parking lot, for $1 million in damages. His rising fame only made it worse. By July, the parents of Ethan Walker and Zachary Bellett followed suit, suing Tay-K for another $1 million from the profits made off The Race. Around this time, Tay-K gave a phone interview from jail with Adam 22 of No Jumper, where he made a bold claim that he'd be out soon.
It's crazy to think about that. You probably would have already seen the world right now if you weren't locked up. Like there's crazy amount of opportunities to be available to you right now.
Yeah. I mean, next time gonna be there. I'm gonna be out soon, hopefully.
However, he slipped up during the interview, admitting that he had an iPad in his cell, which led to a shakedown where the device was confiscated.
Nobody's ever heard you speak on this song at all. So have you heard it?
Yeah. I got a tablet. Like, I got an iPad. I'll be listening to music in it.
By August, Tay-K had been transferred to the Lon Evans Correctional Center, a maximum security facility in Texas where he was placed in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. Despite everything, Tay-K still kept a positive outlook, even posting a picture of himself on Twitter with the caption, "Live from the gates of hell." But things were closing in on him fast. More sentences were handed down in the Ethan Walker murder case. Ariana Barrett, one of the girls involved in the robbery, was sentenced to 25 years in exchange for testifying against the remaining men. A week later, Sean Robinson received 40 years for his role in the crime. Pimps and Tay-K were still awaiting their fate, both now indicted for a second murder charge, the killing of Mark Salvador. Pimps was even offered a deal to testify against Tay-K, but he refused, staying loyal to the bond they had as friends. Still, in November 2018, Pimps pled guilty to 2 counts of aggravated robbery for his involvement in the murder of Ethan Walker and Mark Salvador. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison.
There's been plea bargaining. You understand what plea bargaining is? On a plea of guilty, the recommendation by the state is 30 years in the institution of being in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Is that your understanding?
Now, Tay-K was the last one left, and the world was eager to see what would happen. In July 2019, his trial finally began, with prosecutors having gathered 3 years' worth of evidence and testimonies. Tay-K pled guilty to aggravated robbery but denied the murder charges. His defense argued that he was just a minor playing a small role in the events. However, the jury wasn't swayed. They had already made up their minds. They even used the lyrics from The Race against him in court, pointing out how he glorified violence and showed no remorse.
3 hours today here before deciding on that 55-year sentence. That song that raised the profile of Tamor Tay-K McIntyre in the end also likely played a role in that prison sentence.
The trial only lasted a week, and by the end, the jury unanimously found Tay-K guilty. He was sentenced to 55 years in prison.
Tamor McIntyre ever so slightly rolled his head to the side as a judge announced his 55-year prison sentence for the murder of Ethan Walker.
Tay-K has since reflected on his time behind bars, expressing that he was young, misguided, and never really had the chance to grow up before his life spiraled out of control. At 24 years old, he now spends his days locked up, maturing and reflecting on his actions. The question remains, though, does Tay-K deserve a second chance, or are the lives he took too high a price for redemption?